Hello, gentle viewers. Sorry to hit you with the laser screwdriver right away, but there seems to be a slight misunderstanding in how we operate around here. You see, I've stated previously on internet forums, on our question and answer periods, and on some of our viewer mail episodes that I don't like to do negative reviews. The reason for this is severalfold. As I've mentioned earlier, these works are people's children. They put a lot of work into them, and I don't see the point in tearing them apart. I love my hobby. I like the idea of being a role-playing evangelist, and therefore just telling people what's there, what's interesting, and why you should be looking into the hobby more than you may be. And I consider myself to be a fairly nice guy. Apparently that's not good enough for some of you. You want blood on the water. You want to see just how badly I can tear into something. You want to see just what I think a bad game is. All right, fine. But to go with the old adage, be very careful what you wish for. So, for today's review, something not so good. Set this to repair. Welcome back, gentle viewers. Today's review, something I said I wasn't going to do because of the no bad review policy, but a lot of people have requested it, and I feel like it does need to be reviewed because it is the 8,000-pound gorilla in the corner that people want to know about. Ladies and gentlemen, Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. Subtitled, No, It's Really Not That Good. Small history with me and Dungeons & Dragons. I go way back, Dungeons & Dragons. 30 years this year I have been role-playing, and it all started back with D&D and the Caves of Chaos, as I've mentioned earlier. D&D 3rd was met with me with mixed results. I liked some of what they did. I didn't like some of what they did. But at the end of the day, I could recognize the damned thing as Dungeons & Dragons. 3.5 cleaned it up in some ways, still made it fairly complicated, but I liked it because I could recognize the damned thing as Dungeons & Dragons. Enter 4th edition. Now, I'll say this for Wizards. They gave you plenty of warning 4th edition was coming, with monthly updates and weekly previews and all the wonderful things they were going to do with 4th edition that I read through, looked at, scratched my head and went, huh? This is 4th edition? This is D&D? Really? But I kept an open mind. And then on the day of the release, I went to my favorite bookstore, grabbed all 3 books, sat down, had a cup of coffee, started flipping through them. And at the end of the day, my opinion was, this is Dungeons & Dragons? Really? The main complaint I have with D&D 4th is that it is almost unrecognizable from its predecessors. Sure, some of the same tropes are there. You still use a 20-sided die. Congratulations. That's not too confusing. There are still some of the standard races. Humans, really, humans are still there. Yay! Elves, although elves have now been split into 2 different races, the Elves and the Eladrin, if I'm beginning to pronounce it correctly, which is in essence really driving home the difference between the Wood Elf and the High Elf. Okay, you might argue that harkens back to Tolkien a little bit more, but still, it does help slightly in that you no longer have 15,000 sub-races of elf you have to trip over. Yet. Yes, Wizards of the Coast, I'm watching you. Then you have dwarves. There's no subdivision to dwarves. They're still just dwarves. Gnomes, completely gone. All right, let's face it. Everyone out there who ever played a gnome, raise your hand. 1, 2, oh, you're just scratching? Okay, sorry. So, really, gnomes are gone. Halflings are still there. They've redesigned how everyone looks. One of the few good things I can say about these books is they are very pretty. They are very well done. The art is nice, and there are very few examples of the chainmail bikini left anymore. Is this good? Is this bad? I'll leave that for you to decide. There is something slightly reminiscent for me about the Errol Otis artwork and the gravity-defying breasts and the chainmail bikinis, but okay, I can live with that. Other races they've included. Tieflings are now an official D&D race. Now, I never cared for tieflings, the offspring, the scion, if you will, of humans and something from the infernal planes. But they're there because people like them. My question is, why not the equivalent from the Good Plains? Why not the Iasmar? Why not bring those in as well? What? Those are probably coming out in other books? Milking it for more money? The hell you say. Now, in fairness, this isn't something that Wizards is alone in doing, and now they've introduced the Dragonkin. Ladies and gentlemen, I've seen a lot of draconic creatures introduced, for some reason in recent years, into my fantasy and sci-fi games. They all have them. Let's count them off, shall we? Yes, let's. Now D&D 4th has made them completely official, and again, the 8,000-pound gorilla sitting in the corner of the room means everyone has to jump on the bandwagon. But wait, there's more. There's Dragonkin and Sundered Skies, which is my precious, precious Savage Worlds games. Okay, it's there. How about Slipstream? Well, sci-fi games have had dragon people running around for years. Why not add more to the list? Personally, I don't like the scaly bastards. I've never really felt the need for them, hearkening all the way back to Dragonlance when you had the Draconians. So the classes are still kind of there, but now we have Warlocks and Wizards. Sounds like its own game, doesn't it? Warlocks and Wizards. Warlocks deriving their power from another source than Wizards do, which brings me to one of the key features of what makes D&D 4th different. The different classes draw their powers, if you will, their shticks, their class abilities from different sources. For example, there's Arcane, which powers the Warlocks and the Wizards. There's Martial, which powers the Rangers, the Thieves, and the Fighters. And then there is Divine, which powers the Paladins and the Priests. There's also a War Leader, which are essentially the commanders of a battlefield. They've redefined all of the standard tactics now. It's now been really boiled down. Yes, Rangers have usually stood back and shot arrows at people. There have been the occasional Drizzt Do'Urden knockoff who has to run in with two swords and kill everything. But now it assumes that everyone is going to fall into one general class, which means if you play a wizard, your job now is no longer really to level the playing field with fireball after fireball. It's to command the playing field, to help your warriors out to do something, to help your thieves to sneak around and strike and run, to help your rangers shoot their arrows better. If you play a warrior, your job is to run in and hit things. The problem is it pigeonholes you a lot, in my opinion. That's the main theme of 4th that I don't like, is the pigeonholing, is the fact that it assumes that at levels 1 to 10, you're exploring dungeons. But I want to go help a king. Well, why don't you stay in the dungeon? That's how you're going to help the king. Levels 11 to 20, you're out making a name for yourself in the world. Levels 20 to 30, you're off making a name for yourself in the multiverse. What if you want to go into the multiverse at level 7? Well, you know, you really shouldn't do that. You might get stepped on by Asmodeus. So there's a lot of pigeonholing and assuming you're going to do things a certain way. But there are books that fix this. What? Wizard publishing more books to get your money? The hell you say? Again, Wizards isn't alone in this. So we have the standard 3 core books that, to their credit, were released all at the same time this time, as opposed to one every month for 3 months, which really staggered it out poorly with the 3rd edition launch, in my opinion anyway. The other main thing that it introduces in this is that all classes now have a class ability. That is essentially, they said, you know, the fighters really get hosed because the wizards have all these different opportunities, and the fighter does, I attack. So the fighter class now has several different combat maneuvers that are basically spells with the serial number filed off. Okay, that really doesn't churn my stomach that much, except you're limited in which ones you can do and when. And then you have the wonderful addition of this little thing called skill challenges, which I read once, and then I read again, and then I realized, hey, my eyes are hemorrhaging. So you know what? We're going to save this for part 2 of this review. Yes, our first 2-part review. Why? It's the 8,000-pound gorilla sitting in the corner of the room. So we'll see you next week for part 2 of D&D 4th edition. Goodbye, gentle viewers. Remember, you asked for it.